Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thanks to all of you from around the world who have joined us today. We have thousands of people online today, which is just fantastic to see. Let me start by introducing myself quickly. My name is Rob Lauer, and I'm a Senior Manager of Product Management here at Progress. Now, I've worked with our Telerik line of products for many years now. Everything from the ASP.NET AJAX controls, to Kendo UI, to what we're going to be talking about today in terms of easy mobile app development and the Telerik Platform. So I've really been looking forward to this. Now, if you want to reach me after the webinar, you can find me on Twitter at Rob Lauer. And just a note that all the screenshots you see today, like right here, these are all apps that were created using the Telerik Platform and or our open source frameworks NativeScript or Kendo UI, all of which we'll talk about today. Okay, let's briefly talk webinar logistics. First of all, prizes. Yes, we are doing a drawing after the webinar for a variety of super cool prizes. Those being Amazon Echo, a Samsung Gear VR, an Amazon Fire tablet, iPad mini, an Apple TV, an Apple gift card, and a bunch of Telerik Platform licenses. Now, the only thing you have to do to be eligible for the prize is attend the webinar like you're doing right now. And as with any of our drawings, there are certain legal restrictions that apply, and you can find those terms on our website. Now, since this is a live stream, there will inevitably be hiccups along the way. If for some reason you can't see or hear the webinar, or maybe you want to share it with a friend, you will be able to watch the webinar in its entirety on YouTube later on today. And if you have any questions at all, whether they are about the products or about mobile app development, please feel free to ask using the EasyMobileDev hashtag on Twitter. We have a whole stable of people from our engineering and developer relations teams ready to help you out. You'll also see the EasyMobileDev hashtag in the footer of my slides, just in case you forget. So ask away. You'll notice there's also a Q&A widget for you to use as part of the webinar. You're welcome to ask questions there as well, especially ones pertaining to any issues you're having with the webinar video feed or audio problems. Finally, at the end of the webinar today, we'll have a quick Q&A where I'll be answering some of the most important questions that have come up. Alright, enough chatter, so let's get started. So you want to build a mobile app? Well, first of all, congratulations. Honestly, building a mobile app is one of the coolest things you can do right now in tech. And today we're going to walk through the steps of how to build a mobile app. Even if you're a complete newbie, you'll be able to follow along pretty easily, trust me. So my assumption of who you are starts and ends with the fact that you are at least curious about building an app. And my goal for this webinar is to empower each and every one of you to feel like you can take that next step to create your own app. Now, I'm going to do this by showing more than I'm telling, and what I mean by that is while I do have some slides to go through, I do want to show you with live demos how this all works. And yes, this webinar is a little more geared towards the developer. The tool we'll be using, Telerik Platform, has a focus on the web/app developer. But even saying that, you'll see that non-developers can also get a lot out of our tools and services. Now, for all my developers out there, I'm guessing you fit into one of these three groups. Maybe you're a web developer. Do you know HTML, JavaScript, and CSS? Are you familiar with libraries like jQuery or Kendo UI? If so, you'll fit in nicely here. Are you a .NET developer? If so, you probably know Telerik from our .NET controls. Maybe you're a traditional WinForms or WPF developer who has been told to build a mobile app. Or maybe an ASP.NET Web Forms or MVC developer who has similar goals and needs. Or maybe you consider yourself more of a JavaScript developer. You love JavaScript, you're familiar with Node and maybe even Angular. Maybe you've even started to embrace TypeScript. If you fit anywhere on this slide, you will be completely comfortable with what we're talking about today. So like I said, you don't have to be a developer to use the Telerik Platform, but it does help quite a bit. But let's be realistic and set some expectations. You have to have some baseline knowledge in HTML, JavaScript, and CSS to be really successful. It doesn't have to be much, but enough to be dangerous. It's better if you have experience developing your own websites. I don't care what they are, but if you've actually written code for a website, that will help a lot. Especially if you've used a JavaScript framework like Angular or React or really any relatively popular framework out there. And of course, it's best if you consider yourself experienced with web technologies. Maybe you've even used Kendo UI in the past or really know the ins and outs of JavaScript and CSS. And so ends what I expect of you. Now, just as importantly as what you need to bring to the table, there is a lot you don't need to bring. The Telerik Platform handles all of the nasty details that you don't want to pay someone to take care of and don't want to handle yourself, including no infrastructure. You don't have to maintain your own build servers. Likewise, you don't need to own a Mac to create iOS apps. You can create iOS apps from a Windows machine easily. You're not dealing with installing and managing Xcode or Android SDKs. You're not writing in language silos. You're not writing Swift, Objective-C, or Java. Simulators and emulators to test your apps are instantly available for you to use. And there's zero painful configuration required. We handle builds, push notifications, social logins, user management, file and data storage, all of this for you. So we'll come back to the Telerik platform in a minute. I do want to talk about this mobile app you want to create, because when it comes to mobile development, we're really talking about creating a mobile experience, right? And there are three major options on the table today when it comes to creating this mobile experience. One is to create a responsive website. This is a regular website that looks just as good on a tiny mobile device as it does on your 30-inch monitor. The second is what is known as a hybrid mobile app. Now this is truly a mobile app. It gets installed on your device via the app stores. It can access native device functionality, and it's called hybrid because it's a mix of web and native technologies. The third is a truly native mobile app. Obviously installed via the app stores as well. A native app differs from a hybrid app in that it has uncompromising performance, reliability, and full access to native device features and APIs. So how do you decide between the three? Let's start with web versus app. In general, you would want to create a mobile website if the following assumptions are true. You don't need access to native device features like contacts, geolocation, Bluetooth, and the like. Maybe performance isn't that big of a deal. You can live with your consumers waiting for resources to load. And maybe you want the reach of mobile web. There's no denying that it's easier to get a user to go to a website than download an app, at least the first time you interact with them. But why would you maybe need a mobile app? Well, maybe you want to provide the most engaging experience possible. You want your users to be immersed in the app. Maybe UI performance is critical. You want a snappy, polished look and feel. And maybe you need access to one or more native device features like the camera, contacts, and such. Now I mentioned this idea of a more engaging experience with mobile apps, and it's true. If we look at this data provided by ComScore, mobile app users spend almost 20 times more time engaged with your content than they do with a mobile website. So mobile web is good for little snippets of information, but if you want to capture the attention of your user, you have to go with an app. Now this webinar is about mobile apps, so I'm going to let the mobile web fall by the wayside for now. But not before I mention that should you have a need for a responsive mobile website, you should look no further than leveraging the power of Kendo UI. With Kendo UI, you get access to more than 70 pre-built widgets. You get gorgeous themes for material design, Office 365, and more. All the widgets are responsive by default, so they scale to every device. And Kendo UI supports jQuery, Angular, and React. Okay, now that we put the mobile web to the side, we can focus on what the Telerik platform lets you do. And that's build hybrid or native mobile apps. And there are valid use cases for both. So let's start with getting into the details of what a hybrid mobile app is. Then we'll look at native so you can help decide for yourself which is the best way. When you're cooking up a hybrid mobile app, you're using HTML for your markup. Yes, the same HTML you use to create websites. You're also using JavaScript for your app's logic. And you use CSS to style your app. Sound like a website? Well, it kind of is. The app itself runs inside of what is called a web view on the device. The web view is kind of like a Chromeless browser window, so no forward or back buttons, just the web engine and canvas itself. Hybrid apps also use Apache Cordova, otherwise known as PhoneGap, which acts as a bridge between these web technologies and your app. This means you use JavaScript with Cordova and plugins to access native device features, and mobile frameworks like Kendo UI or Ionic to build your app. So if hybrid is pure web technologies, then native must be some complicated proprietary language and framework, right? Actually, when we talk about native in the context of the Telerik platform, we're talking about creating a native app with our own open source framework we call NativeScript. NativeScript lets you create truly native mobile apps using many of these same web technologies. For example, instead of HTML, you use a very easy to understand XML syntax that provides a truly native user interface. You use JavaScript, yes, the same JavaScript you've been using for years. You use a subset of CSS, again, the same CSS you've been using for years to style your app. And the last ingredient is, of course, the NativeScript framework itself. NativeScript is a thin layer that allows your app code to be compiled at runtime and run at native speed on the devices. NativeScript has its own set of plugins to extend your app, along with a set of UI tools we call UI for NativeScript. You can also access the wealth of existing native libraries like CocoaPods on iOS, as well as existing JavaScript libraries you can find all over the web. So, if I can overgeneralize the differences between hybrid versus native, let me start with hybrid. Hybrid lets you use your web skills to create mobile apps. You can quickly get your app to market because you're using those same web skills you've been using for years. There are potential downsides though, like questionable app performance, meaning stuttering animations or slow responses to user actions. You also have to rely on Cordova plugins to access native device features, which means when iOS 10 comes out, you may have to wait a bit for plugin developers to catch up. Now, with NativeScript, the pros are also using those same web skills. Granted, it's not HTML, but it's a simple XML syntax for laying out your pages. You do get that real native app performance. There aren't many cons though right now. Since it is relatively new, it might be a little harder to get up to speed, but this will of course only improve as time goes on. In general, I would say hybrid is great for basic business apps that don't have a dependency on complicated UI, or even for creating proof of concept apps that are then completed maybe as native apps with NativeScript. On the NativeScript side, again, any app that needs native UI, native performance, complete access to native device APIs, those are all good cases for going with NativeScript. Now, while the details of NativeScript are a little outside the scope of what I have time to talk about today, I did want to give you some background. I've been saying that you can use your web skills to develop native apps, and that's true with XML, CSS, and JavaScript. Your XML elements are very easy to understand elements like the root page element, labels, text fields, images, date pickers, very intuitive controls. The app logic is handled with JavaScript. We support plain vanilla JavaScript or TypeScript. We also fully support Angular 2. Now the cool thing about our Angular 2 support is that it allows you to reuse a ton of your code between a mobile app and a mobile website. Finally, you style your UI elements with plain old CSS. You can use Sass or less as well if you prefer, and you can style your app and even create animations with familiar CSS animation commands. Now the great thing about both hybrid development with Cordova and native development with NativeScript is that they're both cross-platform. Now this is important because it means you write your app code once and it automatically runs on iOS, Android, and Windows without any changes required. Now you'll notice the asterisk next to Windows because as of today, the Windows implementation for NativeScript is not yet complete, but we're hoping to have something in the coming months. So cross-platform is hugely important and an immense time saver for obvious reasons. You're writing code once instead of 2 or 3 times, and the cool thing with both Cordova and NativeScript is that you can still customize pieces of your app for separate platforms. So if on iOS you want tab-based navigation on the bottom of the screen versus the top of the screen for Android, that's totally fine to do. So we know about hybrid apps versus responsive web versus native apps. One other concept we need to consider are frameworks. A framework provides you with a certain amount of structure and patterns to follow when building an app, and it addresses a lot of the low-level details for you. For instance, today if I were to develop a hybrid mobile app, I would probably choose between Kendo UI and Ionic, 2 very popular mobile JavaScript frameworks. Personally, I would pick Kendo UI just because I'm more comfortable with it, but Ionic has its benefits as well. And if I were going with a cross-platform native JavaScript framework, I would be looking at NativeScript and React Native. Obviously, I'm going to focus on NativeScript, mostly because NativeScript provides true write once, run anywhere functionality, while React Native requires separate code bases for separate platforms. So my choices boil down to hybrid versus native, and for me that means looking at Kendo UI and NativeScript. So now that I've presented all these choices, how does one decide? Well, we've got hybrid and we have multiple native options like NativeScript and React Native and Xamarin. Let's take a moment to look at some of our competitors and see how we stack up. So starting at the top, every framework here allows you to access native device features. The asterisk next to Cordova is because Cordova relies on plugins to access features, so it can lag behind other frameworks. NativeScript, on the other hand, gets a check plus because it provides access to 100% of the native device APIs all the time. This is especially useful for when, say, iOS 10 comes out. You don't have to wait for plugins to be updated. With NativeScript, you can use those APIs on day one, unlike Xamarin and React Native. Now, all the frameworks except for Xamarin let you reuse your existing web-based skill set that's based on JavaScript. Likewise, all the frameworks except for Cordova provide you with native UI and native performance. As another differentiator, all the frameworks except React Native are considered write once, run anywhere. I put an asterisk next to Xamarin because this does apply to Xamarin Forms, so I'm giving them kind of the benefit of the doubt here. And in terms of ease of onboarding, it's a tough call and very subjective, but I would say as of today, Cordova has a slight edge if you're coming from a web developer perspective, hence that asterisk next to the NativeScript checkbox. Both are easy to use, but Cordova may be slightly easier today. I personally think Cordova and NativeScript have a leg up here over Xamarin and React Native, but this is really just my opinion, so take it with a grain of salt. So, what would I do? If you're at all like me, you like to have guidance, but it's easier if someone just tells you what they think is the quote-unquote right thing to do. In my opinion as of today, the right way to go is NativeScript. It's easy to get started with it. You're using web technologies you know and love. You get native performance out of the box. You can optionally use TypeScript, which is a technology from Microsoft that gives you a strongly typed implementation of JavaScript. And as I already mentioned, you can also optionally leverage Angular 2, which is a hugely popular JavaScript framework from Google. Now, that being said, if you feel like hybrid would be a better fit for you, go for it. The Telerik platform fully supports both hybrid and NativeScript app development. But I think looking at the coming months and years, mobile apps will be more and more focused on native tech than ever before. So let's come back to the Telerik platform. And today we are together going to build a native mobile app using NativeScript and the Telerik platform. But you should be asking why. Why would I want to use the Telerik platform? Well, earlier I told you about all these things you don't need to bring to the table because of what the Telerik platform can do for you. But what about some of what we do bring to the table for you? Well, we do provide a visual designer to scaffold your app UI and functionality without touching a line of code. We provide you with easy to integrate push notifications out of the box. We provide an easy way to integrate your app with social logins like Facebook and Google. App Store integration. You can publish your app directly to the app stores without needing a Mac. Cloud-based builds. Again, you don't need a Mac for iOS builds. When iOS 10 comes out, you'll be able to build for that new version in our cloud. There's no SDKs or messy configuration management. That is all handled in our cloud as well. We provide a set of companion apps that let you deploy your app to a device and test it without having to go through the messy iOS certificate and provisioning profile battle. We also handle asset generation for you. This means you upload one big image for your app icon, and we generate the ridiculous number of different sized icons for you. We provide best-in-class simulation and emulation options for when you're testing your apps. You can also deploy and test directly to any local devices you have. Finally, we have full Visual Studio integration. So if you're a Visual Studio user today, you can take advantage of all of these services. One more point I want to make is that we've designed the Telerik platform to be flexible and function within your existing workflow. To that end, we provide a variety of ways to use the platform tools and services. Today, I'll be demoing the Telerik platform within our web-based in-browser client. As mentioned already, we have an extension to Visual Studio. We also have a command line interface that runs on Mac and Windows. So this is great for accessing our services via any existing workflow you have in place. Finally, we have a cross-platform desktop app that gives you a great offline experience. And if you're curious about the viability of our services, I can tell you that the Telerik platform has grown immensely year over year since it first took root in 2014. Each year brings more users and more features and more improvements for you, and we're excited with what 2017 will bring. And maybe this means something to you, maybe not, but Telerik Platform has received numerous awards over the years. Most recently, we were recognized by Gartner as a visionary in their 2016 Magic Quadrant report on mobile app development platforms. This is a huge honor and really validates that we're on the right path for providing value for our customers. And none of this really means anything without our customers. We have customers big and small from all over the world. You may or may not recognize some of these names. But even more important to me is what individual people tell us about their experiences with the Telerik platform. Without question, the underlying themes of developing mobile apps with the Telerik platform are speed of development and leveraging existing skills, right? So obviously these are key for being successful in this rapidly changing field. And more than anything, we want to empower our customers and make them feel successful in whatever they're trying to accomplish. Okay. That is enough of me blabbering on at you. I'd like to take the rest of the time we have and actually create a mobile app from scratch. You'll see every part of the app development process, and you'll be able to follow along, especially when this webinar is available later today on YouTube. So without further ado, let me switch over to my Telerik Platform account. So here we are in the Telerik platform. Now, as you can see, I'm logged into my personal account that is, well, extremely littered with all kinds of little demo apps I've done over the years. Now, in this kind of a situation, I can quickly filter my apps. So I can enter a keyword here like photo. Now, this will let me filter them by that keyword. Obviously, it's useful if you find yourself with too many little apps like me. Now from this home screen, you can also access these things called dashboards. Now, in my case, I have one dashboard set up, but it provides me this quick window to view my app analytics. Now here I have one little app that I published in the app stores a while back that shows me how many users and sessions I have in this app over the last 7 days. Now it also shows location data, which is kind of interesting. Apparently, let me see if I can browse the map here. I saw this the other day. My app is apparently a huge hit in Vietnam. That's hilarious. 17% of my users are there. Anyway, this is really just a shortcut to provide these high-level overview of your app's performance. Again, if you had many apps, you can configure these dashboards to show all kinds of data. And even these individual segments here, you can customize these to show data for, say, the last year. So in my case, you can see my sessions have been pretty consistent over the last year with some spikes in there. And my users in this case, well, I'm seeing a declining user base, so I really need to do some work there. Let's check our location. Location, yeah, US used to be a big hit, but now it's declining as well. So again, very interesting data you can get out of your account dashboards. Now next up here is the app distribution tab. I'm not going to have time to get into too much detail here, but suffice it to say that you can use the Telerik Platform in the app distribution tab to distribute an app in-house with these automated tools. So what we provide in here allows you to make beta testing and internal distribution of an app, whether it's for testing or for end users. It makes it truly a breeze with our integration for iOS, Android, and Windows Phone. Now I'm going to go ahead and switch over to a shared account that's owned by my friend and colleague Vladi. All right, so I did this to show you how you can have multiple people as part of one account. So it's really easy to collaborate on projects this way. The Telerik Platform app building environment is really a set of tools and services all geared towards helping you quickly and easily build a mobile app. So what I showed you are some of the high-level home screen options you can take advantage of, but let's go ahead and create an app, right? So I'm going to hit the Create App button here. And remember, we support both hybrid development with Apache Cordova and native development with NativeScript. There are advanced options here as well. You're welcome to browse those. And in fact, let's take a quick look at those. Now, under the advanced option here, you see we can go ahead and clone a variety of sample apps and templates. So we have some, for hybrid, we have some Kendo UI templates that provide different navigation options with a tab, strip, and drawer. There are a variety of samples that leverage native device features like the accelerometer, barcode scanner, and camera as well. If I switch over to NativeScript, you'll see we have similar kinds of sample apps and templates to start with. And we can also filter between JavaScript and TypeScript options as well. So if I want to start a tabbed app with NativeScript that leverages TypeScript, I can do that right here. Now, the other option I can do here, I can clone an existing repository. I don't want to get too far in the weeds here to confuse you. I can clone an existing Git-based repository here by just entering the URL and hitting Create App. And this will make a clone of that remote repository. All right, but let's start simple here and let's go ahead and create a new native app using NativeScript. So I'm going to enter an app name here like Easy Mobile App Webinar and just hit Create App. Now, one disclaimer I will give you is that you're going to see a pre-release version of the Telerik Platform for NativeScript. Most of what you see here you can do today, but a few features aren't available right now, but they will be by the end of September or early October. So just a warning that things may look a little different when you get in and start using it. All right, so here is where we start actually building our app. Now this is the Views service, otherwise known as Screen Builder. Screen Builder lets me scaffold my app by choosing from a variety of predefined view types you see right here. Now each view is effectively a page of my app. Now let's pretend I own coffee shops all over the world. The app we're going to create today will let us view and edit all of these coffee shops. I'm kind of like the next Starbucks, so yeah, I'm a pretty big deal, right? Now, this app is going to have 3 simple views or pages. The first will be an authentication view that lets me authenticate as the user of said coffee shops. So let's choose authentication here. And let's just title it authentication. And I don't want a register option. I just want people to sign in and hit apply. And you'll see as I apply it, it generates my app in the simulator. which shows me a very accurate representation of how the app will look on my device. Now, in a larger view outside of the webinar, you'll actually be able to see the entire device right here. And let me talk about the simulator really quickly, because using the options up here, I can actually switch between all kinds of iPhone or iOS and Android devices, including Windows as well. I can switch between versions of OSs. I can rotate the canvas. I can reload the simulator if I have to. There's a lot of really nifty little features you can explore there. Now I'm going to add another view, and my second view is going to be a list of coffee shops. So I'm going to just call it, I'm going to choose Master Detail, because Master Detail gives me a parent-child expression of data from my data source. And I'm going to title it just coffee shops, right? Now my data provider here is going to be an existing Telerik backend services data source. Now this is a data source I created for the webinar already. It's a very simple set of database tables that gives me some coffee shops and their locations around the world. So the content type I'm going to choose here, this is effectively like a database table. So right here, I'm going to choose coffee shops by country. I'm going to go down here and I'm going to choose item action, because I want something to happen when I choose an item from the list. So I'm going to open an existing view with related content. Oh, but I don't have that view yet, right? I haven't created that third view. So in the meantime, let's just leave it there. I need to expose some data fields here. So under basic fields, I'm going to say choose country. And I'm just going to apply here so we can see what it looks like. There we go. So I have coffee shops that exist in Bulgaria and the USA. Right, but now I want to take that next third step, and I want to actually use this app, choose a data item, and actually expose some more information about that item. So I'm going to add a third view here. And I'm going to choose the map view. And I'm just going to call it coffee shop map. And my content type here, remember my database table, it's just going to be coffee shops. And here I'm just going to hit apply. Now we have in our simulator what kind of looks like a map, right? But there's no actually data attached to it, so that map doesn't know where to actually put my little pinpoint. So now we need to kind of bring all these views together. So I'm going to go back to my authentication view and I'm going to say, upon a successful sign-in, I want to actually go to the coffee shop list. Right? And in my coffee shops view, I want to link this to my other view. So I scroll down here so I can say in my item action, when I tap on an item, I want it to open an existing view with related content. So it's going to open the coffee shop map view. And it says which coffee shop map field is the relation to coffee shops. And that's going to be coffee shop by country. Right, so I'm going to say when I'm tapping on USA, for instance, it's going to only show me coffee shops that are available in the USA. All right, at this point I can go down here and I can hit apply. And in my map view, I'm going to scroll down to the detail view here. And I want to say that my title of my screen, what you see up here, is going to be data bound. And let's bind it to the name field. All right, so let's go back to my coffee shops view here and look at it in the simulator. So if in the simulator, if I choose USA, now I chose USA, but I'm still not seeing any data. What's going on here? Well, I realize now that I made a mistake. I didn't add my Mapbox API key, which is a pretty fundamental step that I missed. So I'm going to navigate back to my map view. I'm going to scroll down here and I'm going to get to my client-side options. So let me paste in my Mapbox access token here. Now, if you don't have a Mapbox access token, which I'm guessing most of you don't, you can actually just click here to get a free one from Mapbox. And we do leverage Mapbox. We use them because they're a fantastic provider of open source maps. I highly recommend you check them out at mapbox.com. So let's hit apply now, and hopefully we'll get our map to show up. There we go. All right. All right, the other thing I need to do is I need to specify the geopoint that I want my map to hone in on. So I'm going to choose a location, which is a geopoint in my data source. Just latitude and longitude, pretty simple stuff. So let's hit apply. All right, so now I'm seeing data points in the US and in Bulgaria. Very cool. But let's actually use the app so we can actually see how it's going to perform. So I'll choose Bulgaria, and you'll see that my map point hones in on my Bulgaria coffee shops. So I can zoom way in. You can see Mapbox is really responsive. Very fun to use. So we're getting into, this is Sofia, Bulgaria, and there's a couple coffee shops here. Now, if I tap on, again, I apologize for my small browser window here, but if I tap on one of these pinpoints, it gives me the address. Now, obviously, I have some fake data in here, but you can see how I can expose some pretty cool data just through the map. So pretty cool. Now, very quickly, you can see what we did. We went through these steps where we have an authentication view that leads to my list of coffee shops, which leads to a coffee shop map. Now, one other quick thing I want to show you to really expose the power of Screen Builder is in our coffee shops view here. I can actually go here, scroll up here, to my options, and I can enable create, edit, and delete screens just with checkboxes. So I'm going to hit apply here. So this gives me full CRUD access to my data. So I can go to the new create option here, and I can create some fields. So I maybe want to do an input area, and I'll call it country. And I can bind that to the country field. Now when I tap on add, you'll see that it didn't change the label. I made a little mistake there. So let's change the label to country. Great, now I'm thinking of expanding into, let's say, Canada. And you'll see, boom, it shows up right there. Now from this screen, you can see how I can get into doing creating data items. I can edit these data items, I can delete them, all with no coding, all from within the Telerik platform. So now that we've scaffolded up an app, and it's not a bad looking app, right? We've got an authentication view that looks nice, we've got a data list that looks nice, and we have a gorgeous map. So now that we have this app, let's be realistic and know that our app development doesn't really end with this visual tool, right? There will usually be some coding that needs to be done, some extension of the app that I want to do that I can't really do with visual tools. And to get into those coding details, I can just move to the code menu here. So once my code environment loads up here, I do want to mention this little dialog you see at the top. So your development experience doesn't end in the browser. You can and frankly should use one of our extensions to continue your coding experience. I personally highly recommend the Visual Studio extension or our new cross-platform desktop client. It's super easy to start an app in the browser and continue that same app in any of these IDEs. That being said, today I'm going to stick to the browser just for simplicity's sake, which is itself a fully functional IDE. Now I'm going to navigate over here and I'm going to open up some of the XML, CSS, and JavaScript files for our app. Now this really proves that our scaffolding tool, the code that it generates is really clean, it's readable, very easy to understand what's going on here. So that's my XML markup, and here's my generated JavaScript. So very easy to tell what's going on. I also get full IntelliSense. So for instance, if I wanted to add a new grid layout element, I can start typing and my syntax is completed for me automatically. So incredibly useful for when you're coding. Obviously, this is really critical when you get into developing apps with NativeScript. Now the same is true for our JavaScript. We get autocompletion as well in here. So if I can just start typing, if data dot, and you see all of our autocompletion properties here that I can choose from. Here's our CSS file. And you see, again, this is a native app. Again, I showed you in the slides like how you can specify CSS properties for a variety of elements. All of this is really familiar CSS, nothing out of the ordinary here. Now, while obviously I'm not really diving too deeply into the coding process itself, I do want to show you more of what you can do with the Telerik platform. Now, one thing you'd normally do is you probably want to extend your app with plugins. So what I can do here is you can do this all within our IDEs. So if I navigate to the properties window and head over to dependencies, now you'll see I can install plugins from NPM or the plugins marketplace. Now you can browse the plugins marketplace for free at plugins.telerik.com. But for now, you can see that adding a plugin like the NativeScript calendar, it's really as simple as a click. Now, sometimes there is some configuration you have to do in code, but you can always do that by navigating to the information you see here. So if I open up this, it'll open up a new window that'll navigate directly to the NativeScript plugin information in plugins.telerik.com, providing code samples and really easy to understand, easy to read information. So the same is true for NPM, where you'll find a lot more NativeScript plugins available. If I do a search for NativeScript-Parallax, I can see this plugin here. I know this is a cool plugin that's available on NPM that I can do a one-click install from. Now, there's a variety of other configuration options that I can handle from here. So I can switch the NativeScript version very quickly if I want to upgrade to a more recent version. I can go into the iOS and Android properties here to set information like the deployment target on iOS. This is the version of iOS I want to target. I can set background mode options here. On Android, I can specify things like the version code, hardware acceleration. I can get into the detailed permissions if I need to. All kinds of stuff in easy to access visual tooling. Now, the cool thing here, though, what I really like to show off are our asset generation. Now, I mentioned this in the slides really briefly, but with iOS and Android, there's all kinds of app icons I need to specify in splash screens. You'll see these are just the ones for iOS. Android has its own host of splash screens and icons we need to do. Yikes, there's so many. So what I can do though is I can go ahead and I can choose an icon, which I happen to have one right here. I can open that up. And what it's going to do, it's going to go through and generate all of the images for me. So by choosing just that one image, it created all the icons for me for iOS and for Android. Pretty cool stuff. And I can do the same thing for splash screen images. So if I upload one big file, it'll generate all these for me. So at this point, we can pretty safely pretend that we've created an app. We're happy with how it performed in the simulator, what we saw in the views service. The next step, though, is to build this app, right, and view it on our device within the companion apps, also known as our developer apps, which are available in the app stores for free. So we have companion apps available for iOS, Android, and Windows Phone. And using the companion apps, I can actually load the app on my device without provisioning the app for my device or doing a full app build. So let me clean up some of my windows here that I've opened. We don't need these guys open. I'm not going to save any changes either. Now, what I do is I access these via the Run menu. So I can go to Run and Build. And I'm going to choose iOS because I have an iOS device handy. And I choose NativeScript Developer App, which is that developer app or companion app. You'll hear me use those words interchangeably. And I can just hit Next. And you'll see it instantly provides me a QR code I can scan with my device. I can also share the URL that's provided here if I want to send it to somebody remotely, for instance. But I don't even want to go through the hassle, which is barely a hassle, of scanning this QR code with my device. There's actually an even easier way to load an app on my device. All right, so I don't need this window open here anymore. And here what you're seeing is the Telerik Platform companion app. So I can tap on the open to open up this NativeScript app on my device. So here's the app that we created. Here's my authentication view. And I can cheat here by actually bypassing the authentication view, going right to my coffee shops. And you'll see I can navigate here and I can click on, tap on USA. And brings up my coffee shop, which actually, I realize I mistakenly labeled in the database as USA, where it's really located in Canada. But I have an imaginary street here. And I can go back and I can look at my Bulgarian ones. So Mapbox, you see these maps are great. They're really quick, very responsive, very fun to use. So there's our app. Very simple to put together. 3 views. It really should take me no more than a few minutes to get this scaffolded up. Saves a ton of time. So pretty easy, right? And really there's much more to creating an app with the Telerik platform. So let's go through all these other options here really quickly. And remember, if you have any questions throughout this process, just use that EasyMobileDev hashtag on Twitter. All right, so first is my Data tab. So this is generally the source of data for your app. When I enable data, you'll see that I can manage my content types, which are effectively like my database tables. I can leverage data connectors, which let me connect to my enterprise data stores. I can manage documents and files. One of my favorites here is responsive images. Now, if I go ahead and add the domain from which my images are served, I can automatically have those images load in the correct size and resolution for whichever device is downloading the files. Now, I can also set permissions on all these objects under the permission tab here. Now, the next tab is users. Users allows me to manage the users of my app if need be. I can also manage user roles and email settings for all the email notifications that go out when users register and such. The cool part of the users tab is the ability to enable social authentication. If I click here, you'll see that I can manage Facebook, Google, Twitter, Microsoft logins, and so on. Very cool stuff. Now, analytics is next, and to me, arguably the most important of our add-ons. By using Telerik Analytics, you'll see how your app is performing based on usage, along with automated crash reporting. You can even track individual feature usage within your app. I already showed you some results from including analytics in my app, in those dashboards from the main menu. So a lot of super useful stuff here. There's just all kinds of detailed information you can get from your app using Telerik Analytics. We even have an app health overview. So we can start seeing crash reports for any kind of project, if it's NativeScript or if it's hybrid. This again gets into how I can access crash report data from all these remote instances of my app without users having to come to me to complain about my app crashing on their device. So again, analytics to me, incredibly useful. Now next up is notifications. Now, notifications allows me to set up and manage push notifications and email notifications. Now we really try and take the pain out of configuring and managing push notifications here for all platforms. If you've done it before, you'll know what I mean by that. So we provide all these really simple to follow instructions for setting up push notifications on either hybrid or NativeScript platforms. And you can do the same thing for email notifications. Email notifications are obviously much simpler. We can go in here and we can manage our templates for a variety of different emails that I want to send out maybe from my app. And now feedback is another great feature that allows me to add in-app feedback to my app. So if I enable this, my users can simply shake their device to bring up a screen, which will let them send feedback to me with a screenshot of where the issue existed. So this is a fantastic beta testing feature to add on to your app. Now next up, business logic. This gets into some more advanced scenarios where, for instance, you want to write JavaScript functions that maybe run in the cloud. So maybe as part of your app, like to manage data that's loaded in your app, or separately as a cron job, for instance, that runs on a regular basis. There's really a lot of power located here in the business logic area. Now, finally, the settings tab down here. I'm not going to click on this because this shows off some of the secret API keys for my app. So no offense, I'm not going to show those in a public setting. I think you understand. But with that, you've seen a really quick overview of what the Telerik platform has to offer. Now, remember that you can sign up for a free 30-day trial at any time using telerik.com/platform. So I can't hammer home the point enough. The Telerik platform is more than even I had time to show you here. I of course focused on the app development process and just touched on some of the services, but there are far more features and capabilities you can add to your app. Now, if you're trying to rationalize Telerik platform for yourself or for your boss, I would focus on these key time-saving and hence money-saving features. Again, we've already talked about most of these, like our visual designer, and cloud builds. Again, this is the ability to build for iOS from Windows. Now, I didn't get a chance to talk about App Manager Live Sync, but this is a feature that allows you to instantly update your app after it's on your customers' devices. So no waiting days for App Store approval anymore. We also provide a similar feature called App Builder Live Sync, which gives you the ability to view changes made to your app in real time in the simulator and to any connected devices during development. Now, this is a huge time saver for developers. App Store publishing, of course. This lets you deploy your finished app directly to the app stores. And I touched on this briefly, but we also provide built-in analytics, which lets you see how your apps are performing, which features are used and not used, and really what, if anything, is breaking in your app, so you can fix those problems before your users have a chance to complain. Now, with that, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for listening to me speak here today. I do have some action items for you to take home. First of all, stay tuned as I'll be going through our Q&A right now. And also, you can visit us at any time at telerik.com/platform. You can sign up for a completely free 30-day trial, and you can try out everything I just showed you. If you have questions after today, always feel free to shoot me a message on Twitter at Rob Lauer. I'm always happy to chat and help people with their mobile app questions. So let's move on to the questions. Now, we've had a lot of great questions come in, so I'm just going to jump right into them. Let's see, the first one here is, can I consume content from an external data source in a NativeScript or hybrid app? The answer to that is yes, of course. We do have data connectors available that I mentioned briefly during the demo. You can connect to an existing SQL Server, Oracle, or MySQL instance with that. You can also write your own API layer at any time and connect to that with your code just fine. Next question is, are Telerik Platform and NativeScript going to be ready for the upcoming iOS 10 release? Yes, absolutely. As I mentioned a couple times, one of the major advantages of NativeScript is the fact that, technically speaking, we are already ready for iOS 10, but really both Telerik Platform and NativeScript plan on being ready for iOS 10 on day one. Next question here, when will full Angular 2 support be available in the Telerik Platform? It's a really timely question, actually. Angular 2 support is landing in just a couple weeks, so stay tuned. And next here, what sort of apps are a good fit for hybrid versus NativeScript? This is a great question. I only briefly touched on this earlier, but generally speaking, basic business apps that aren't heavy on complex UI are great for hybrid. Hybrid is also good for quick proof of concept apps that maybe you then take and create a NativeScript app from. Really anything that requires a responsive UI and a more engaging experience, or even a game, for instance, those are all good reasons to use NativeScript. Again, looking forward into 2017, I think we will see these native JavaScript frameworks as kind of the standard for cross-platform native app development. All right, next question. What will be the default language for the NativeScript Angular 2 apps generated with the Telerik platform? Vanilla, JavaScript, or TypeScript? So the answer to that is TypeScript will be the default, but you're certainly free to use plain JavaScript as well. We're not going to dictate which direction you take. And do you support adding a social or Active Directory authentication provider for my app? Yes, absolutely. This is also something we really briefly touched on, but you can add this, you can find this option really as part of the Users tab in the Telerik platform itself. Next up, can I use Ionic? Yes, I've mentioned Ionic a couple times here. You can use really any UI toolkit that's compatible with Cordova, like Ionic. Furthermore, actually using the App Builder CLI, you can import projects that you already created by using the Ionic CLI. And actually, with that, I think that's all we have time for. Thank you so much again, everyone, for attending. Again, the recording will be available on YouTube later on. Have a fantastic rest of your day.